Our gospel reading today is John 14, 1-14. Don't let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God, have faith in me as well. In God's house, there are many dwelling places. Otherwise, how could I have told you that I was going to prepare a place for you? I am indeed going to prepare a place for you, and then I will come back to take you with me. That is where I am going there that you may be as well. You know the way that leads to where I am going. Thomas replied, but we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? Jesus told him, I myself am the way. I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to God but through me. If you really knew me, you would know Abba God also. From this point on, you know Abba God, and you have seen God. Rabbi, said Philip, show us Abba God, and that will be enough for us. Jesus replied, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still don't know me? Whoever has seen me has seen Abba God. How can you say, show us your Abba? Don't you believe that I am in Abba God and God is in me? The words I speak are not spoken of myself. It is Abba God living in me who is accomplishing the works of God. Believe me that I am in God and God is in me, or else believe because of the works I do. The truth of the matter is, anyone who has faith in me will do the works I do and greater works besides. Why? Because I go to Abba God, and whatever you ask in my name, I will do, so that God may be glorified in me. Anything you ask in my name, I will do. La palabra de Dios. Gracias a Dios.
College and seminary. I had already applied and been accepted, but I got the opportunity to join this group that was going to be traveling to Brazil and Malawi for a year. And I decided I'm going to take that opportunity. That sounds amazing. And I'll join seminary 1 year later. It was with a Christian group. So this is, before I get into the story, this is going to be another one of the stories. I feel like I'm starting to repeat myself. And it's another story basically of kind of being told how to believe, what to think, what it means to be Christian. Okay. So I was part of this group and we were going to Brazil and Malawi. And the idea, we worked at a camp. And it was an international Christian camp. So we had counselors from all around the world come who were Christian and talk about what it meant to them to be sort of this global faith. That was the purpose of the camp. So we were traveling to build relationships and recruit folks to come back and work at the camp for the next summer. We had a retreat before we left, and we had daily Bible studies in the morning and in the evening. And this was one of the evening Bible studies. And we kind of got off on a tangent, or maybe it's not a tangent, maybe it's like a really core central question about, yeah, I know, about kind of what it means to be saved. What do you have to believe? What do you have to believe in order to be saved? Very core central question. And it, it like went off into this deep spiral. So we were talking about like, well, I'm not going to say the name of this person. I don't want thank you. It's like a really intense question. We were debating these two actual people. One was Gandhi, amazing global leader in the world, doesn't identify as Christian. Another was a leader of the Third Reich in Germany, not going to say their name. And but who did identify as Christian? Who goes to heaven? Who goes to hell? This is the question that we were debating. And folks were making the case that the leader, that whoever professes faithfulness to Jesus Christ is the person who goes to heaven. And I'm not here actually right now. I don't want to resolve this question today. What I do want to say is that for me, being told that Gandhi would go to hell while this other person didn't, or let's not even get into the question of heaven or hell. That's so many big theological questions in this example. What I want to walk away from here is how it felt to think that Gandhi would be going to hell. And I thought, if this is what Christianity is about, no, I'm not Christian. But I stuffed that. I was very well trained. I stuffed that feeling down. I went to Brazil with the group. I fell into a deep depression. And when we came back to Minnesota for the holidays, I made the decision to leave the group. I wasn't going to go on. And I told them, I can't come. I can't do this anymore because I'm not Christian. And then 8 months later, though, I was set to go to seminary. So yeah, I feel a little silly. I'm like, here's another one of these stories of really kind of what brings me here with my particular theological makeup before you all. But that experience felt so important to talk about today because both of our texts feel related to it. It felt like a hard place where the earth was tamped down hard and nothing could grow. No flowers could bloom there. And then also our other text, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to God except through me. Ooh. Has anyone else struggled with that text before? Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not alone. And it's important because we have this cross on the outside of our church, at the outside of our building, our Leven Community Center, that says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Okay. And we know the two words that come next. There's some tension there. Not making any argument about that cross either, by the way. Just that it's important for us to grapple with it. So I wonder if there are other ways that we can think about this text. Maybe it's not quite so black and white, or this either or, this or that. We'll come back to it though. The poem today, The Place Where We Are Right, we're doing, in our Easter season, we're talking about germination. And we're talking about germination really intentionally because the moment where this community is right now, I feel, is in this place where we are starting anew together again. And we have folks that are new here. We have folks that have been here for a long time. And we're all this seed together. There's a lot happening right now underneath the surface, a lot growing, unfurling, uncoiling, getting ready to reach up and out. And it's important for us to be thinking about what is the soil that we are planting ourselves in? Are we planting in a place where we are right? Are we leaning into our doubts and our loves, where we can be tilling up the soil like a mole, like a plow? And in relationship too with our text today with John, can we have a solid foundation of our own faith, of our own beliefs, and also be able to listen, be able not to be operating out of a place where we are right? Recently, I was listening to the podcast On Being. Does anybody else listen to this podcast? Yay, this is the one where we get to all raise our hands. This is the sermon where I ask you to raise your hands a lot. This podcast, Krista Tippett was interviewing Janine Banas, who is she's a science writer from American, and she wrote a book called Biomimicry. Biomimicry is about taking inspiration from the natural world for how we can grow into the future to mimic biology. And but in this episode, which I strongly recommend this episode of On Being, Banas talks about Darwin's On the Origin of Species. And has anyone, oh, here we can raise our hands again. Has anyone heard the survival of the fittest, that phrase? Little known fact, or maybe you know this, that phrase was originally not survival of the fittest, it was survival of the fit. What that means is evolution isn't about competition within a species for who gets to survive, which is the way we kind of think about it. It was actually survival of the fit in terms of when a species environment changes, does that species adapt to the environment? Can they fit to the environment? It's survival of ability to evolve to one's surroundings. And that's so important. We've constructed our whole world around the fittest, around competition. But it's actually about evolution and adaptation and emergence. And I thought about this because, also to say, I'm going to back up. Darwin changed it to survival of the fittest in conversation with another scholar of the time who was reading Darwin. They used the term survival in the fittest of the fittest in their text. That text was better known and better read. So in Darwin's 5th version, he switched it to survival of the fittest, but he still meant fit. Okay, the concept is still about fitting to one's environment. Okay. Knowing this changes so much. About this one line, and turns out maybe we've been misreading this line. And I thought of that when thinking about this line in John. Maybe we've been misreading this line. Maybe we've been thinking about it, I'm not going to say wrong, but maybe there are other ways we can think about it. So let's dig into it a little bit. If we look at the surrounding passage, we can see how it's really a passage, Jesus is attempting to reassure his disciples. That's really what this is about. They, like we said in the wondering time, they're really concerned about where Jesus is going. What's going on? What, are you going to come back? And can we come with you? And he's like, yeah, you can come with me. Don't worry about it. You know the way. And they ask again, but how? How do we know the way? What does that mean? I am the way. If you know me, you'll be able to find your way too. You know it. We have to think about the context. Jesus is speaking to an audience who actually does know him. They've been in relationship with one another for a very long time. You know the way. So that really what that is about is we're to understand that this teaching is supposed to reassure us that there is, in fact, a dwelling place for all of us. There's another element to this text that I kind of love, and I love about a lot of John, is that it's very mysterious. You can read it. No matter how many times I read it, I end up walking away kind of confused. It's like kind of cyclical. And they keep asking, and then Jesus keeps responding, and then they ask again, and he responds again. And he's kind of saying the same thing over and over again, but in different ways. And they keep kind of not getting it. And the more he talks, the more sort of like abstract and lofty it gets. It feels like a Buddhist koan. Does anyone know what a koan is? Kind of like a riddle. And the purpose of it is for us to understand that we can't break things down logically all the time. The purpose is to invite a deeper knowing that invites us into enlightenment. We can't work it out in our mind. It's got to be about trust. Right? It's got to be about an inner knowing. And that's the last piece that I think it's important to be leaning into when we're reading this text. Jesus says, believe in me. And the word for believe in ancient Greek is the same as the word for trust. When we, as post-enlightenment folks, hear the word belief, we hear about it in the context of like the scientific method. You put out your theory, you run your experiments, you identify your proof, you prove it to be right, and now I can believe. This context in which John was writing, pisteuo, is about trust. It's a different kind of belief. It's a knowing. It's the kind of knowing that comes from deep within. You know the way. We can rest in the mystery. We can rest in the trust. We don't have to figure it all out. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust God. Trust also in me. You already know the way. So 8 months after I left Brazil and said, no longer am I Christian, I did go to seminary. I brought with me all of my questions, and I brought with me all of my doubts, and I actually also brought with me a little bit of suspicion and some anger and some frustration too. And I was ready to be told again that I was wrong. And I was ready to leave if I had to. I said I was going to give it 1 semester. But when I got there, I was met with welcome for my questions. I was met with a delight in the rigor of putting our religion to the test, to see if it holds water. And I realized that I was kind of thinking about it all wrong. I was thinking that my questions and my doubts were evidence of my lack of Christianity, but actually that the practice of faith isn't about questions or no questions. It's about whether or not our faith is durable enough to withstand questions. And it's actually that durability and those questions liberate our faith. Having faith is about freedom. It's about our own profession of our faith, of our beliefs, of our trust in something that's mysterious, that's beyond us, that we don't fully understand. And the questioning allows us to be fully human inside of that faith. It's about freedom. Freedom to pray in the way that we know how to pray. Freedom to follow where the Spirit leads, to profess our truest beliefs, to love each other, to love the mystery. Practicing our faith is not worrying about if we have it right or wrong, or if anybody else has it right or wrong. It's about connection to Spirit, to the deep groundwater of our being. I am the way and the truth and the life, and you already know the way. We may not understand those words intellectually, but we feel them. And at some point, that's all that we can do, is just feel them. You already know the way. So we have to make our faith our own. My faith cannot be your faith. Just as we have to make our grief our own, our lives our own, our relationship our own. And so back to that hardened yard. Doubts and love dig up the world like a mole, like a plow. And so when we bring the rigor of our questions to our sturdy faith, it blossoms. And when we bring the fierceness of our love to one another, it opens us up. We crack open and we find our way to the sky. You already know the way. Amen.